Can a Christian be rich and famous? Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. That way you stay up to date on all new videos. Being rich and famous is not sinful. However, making that a primary suit of life is sinful. People who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction, according to 1 Timothy 6 and 9. And Proverbs 23 and 4, which also states, "Do not toil to acquire wealth." The world would have us to believe that the only way to become rich and famous is to set goals and to pursue them doggedly. But the Bible paints a pretty different picture. Consider 3 biblical figures whose examples speak to the issue. Number 1, first and foremost, Jesus. When tempted by Satan, he initially rejected the opportunities to become rich and famous, according to Matthew 4, 1-11. Jesus devoted himself to the task God gave him, as we see in John 5 and 19. We are compelled to take the attitude of Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equal with God something to be used in his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. He humbled himself, according to Philippians 2, 5-8. But what was the result of Jesus humbling himself? Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, Philippians 2 and 9. Number 2, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. As a slave, he had no ambitions to be rich and famous. He only did the work that was put before him. In Potiphar's house, Joseph's faithfulness resulted in him being put in charge of everything. Later in jail, he helped his fellow prisoners earn a trust that ultimately led to him being put in charge of all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. In short, Joseph focused on what God wanted him doing, and as a result, he became one of the most powerful and famous men in the world, according to Genesis 37-41. Number 3, he was not wealthy, but the Apostle Paul was perhaps the most famous Christian ever to live. How did his fame become worldwide and timeless? He simply did what God put him on earth to do, which was to make disciples. He certainly had a claim to worldly fame, describing some of his accomplishments in Philippians 3, 4-6. Yet, what did he think about these pursuits that would have warranted him fame? Whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. Paul's ambition was to never become famous or gather the accolades of men. His burning ambition was to do God's work and to glorify Christ. That was his high calling. In Matthew 6, 10-20, Jesus teaches us not to store up treasures on earth, but in heaven. Then he says you cannot serve both God and money. And seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things, the basic necessities of life, will be given to you as well. Matthew 6 and 33. That is, stop trying to be rich and famous, and instead simply seek after God, living out his purpose for your life. If God wants earthly riches to come your way, they will. For those who are ambitious to be rich, the Bible has many cautions. And Jesus said, it is difficult for the rich to enter into the kingdom of heaven in Matthew 19 and 24. Material wealth has a way of taking our eyes off what is important and eternal. Jesus' parable of the rich fool in Luke 12, 16-21 teaches that it is foolish to store up earthly things and take no thought into heavenly things. As for pursuing fame, the Bible is equally cautious. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, according to Matthew 23 and 12. Paul said, a person with a changed heart seeks praise from God, not from people, Romans 2 and 29. James asked, don't you know that friendship with the world means enemy against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be friends of the world becomes an enemy of God, James 4 and 4. Those who are rich and famous often struggle to obey basic biblical commands such as be content with what you have, according to Hebrews 13 and 5. And do not be proud, but enjoy the company of the lowly. Do not be conceited, as stated in Romans 12 and 16. And now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you, James 5 and 1. Let's be clear, it's not wrong to have wealth. It is the love of money that is the root of all kind of evils, according to 1 Timothy 6 and 10. But those with wealth should understand where wealth comes from, which is God, and the purpose for having it, which is to further God's work, and its transitionary nature, according to Proverbs 23 and 5. Ecclesiastes 2 and 24 notes, a person can do nothing better than to eat, drink, and find satisfaction in their own toil. The same passage clarifies the source of the blessing. This too, I see, is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? Ecclesiastes 24 and 25. We should not make fame and fortune a primary suit in life. Rather, we should make glorifying God our primary goal. Love Jesus and obey him, John 14 and 16. We follow Jesus, which means we deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow wherever he leads, according to Mark 8:34. Jesus blesses the meek, Matthew 5:5. Being rich and famous is not usually his plan for his children in this world.